All right, thank you, everyone. It is 7:03, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'll start with roll call.
Councilmember Alves,
Here.
Councilmember Hefty,
Here.
Councilmember Taylor is absent this evening, Vice Mayor Haskell,
Here.
Mayor Warnikoff.
Here.
We have a
Thank you.
quorum.
Thank you. We don't have any presentations or proclamations tonight. Before I hand it over to you, Corey, for just, I think you had some brief updates for town manager. I also just wanted to acknowledge you and thank you on behalf of the council for filling in and stepping up as interim town manager at this important time of transition for the community. And I know I speak for all of us that we have tremendous gratitude and appreciation for you and all you're doing to help us out. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Warnikoff, for your kind words, and everybody on council. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here and excited to support the staff. So just a few quick updates. The town picnic and Zots to Tots, I've heard it was a great success and had an amazing turnout. And thank you to all who worked on it and everyone who attended as well. And there was also an amazing video, the commemorative 60-year video, the Portola Valley at 60, which we do have linked on our website for those who have not seen it yet on our town YouTube. I do want to introduce Christine Boland, who's here assisting the clerk's office. She has extensive experience with San Carlos, Samtrans as a clerk, as well as a director of Parks and Recreation. So we're excited to have her expertise on staff to assist us. Continued gratitude to residents for their patience and cooperation during the transition. Our planning and building department is forging ahead, issuing permits, as well as working on the backlog. We have found that there seems to be this sort of crack where we are losing a few of the permits that were submitted during that July to end of August period of time. So we're trying to reach out and proactively address any concerns we have in terms of missing information. So a huge thank you to John, Terrence, Gabe, and Yvette for acknowledging that and making sure that they circle back with everybody as needed. Also, a thank you to Tony McFarland, our finance director. He's been really hard at work to establish information for the October 1st Finance Committee meeting. So I encourage everybody to tune in and attend that meeting to find out the latest in our financials, as well as information about the upcoming budget meeting on October 23rd. And last, unfortunately, still have not heard anything from HCD yet regarding the housing element. I know Terrence, our interim planning and building director, continues to email them weekly for updates, but we have not heard anything just yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Any comments or questions on the manager's report? All right, thank you, Corey. We will move on to oral communications. I don't see any hands raised in the schoolhouse. And at this moment, I don't see any hands raised on Zoom. I will wait a moment. Yeah, still no hands raised on Zoom. So I will close oral communications and let's move on to the consent agenda. Is there anything on the consent agenda that anybody might like to pull?
The only, there's a couple of minor typos. I would just suggest I forward them. They're very minor and non-substantive. So if it's okay, I don't want to pull it if everyone's comfortable.
Yes. Thank you.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
For a second.
Check, see if there's any public comment.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. I forgot last time too. Appreciate that. Any public comment on any items on the consent agenda? I don't see any hands raised here in the schoolhouse. And there are no hands raised on Zoom. So I will close public comment on the consent agenda and entertain a motion.
I will now move to approve the consent agenda.
Second? Roll call.
Councilmember Alves,
Aye.
Councilmember Hefty,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor is absent, Vice Mayor Haskell,
Aye.
Mayor Warnikoff.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. Thank you, Tony. Moving right along, we do not have any regular agenda items tonight, so I'll move on to my colleague's memo, which is item number 7. And for note, this is really not the opportunity to get into the details necessarily of the disposable, but, or the ordinance, but per the agreement, in terms of the process that we discussed several months ago, for bringing new items forward to the council, I am putting forth this, colleagues memo to see if there's consensus or not about bringing this discussion forward. And so really that's the main point. As I, just to highlight here, I'm not going to read through the details in the memo, but just that my request in the memo is for the council to direct staff to bring this ordinance forward for consideration for adoption by the November 13th council meeting. And just a couple of other highlights that I'll just, mention that Portola Valley, we know as a community that we pride ourselves as having a foundation and ethos in sustainability. And at this point, we are one of just 4 in the 20 municipalities in San Mateo County that have not passed this. The vast majority, 16 others passing it, 3 or 4 years ago at this point. So I think this would be, great if we could bring this forward for discussion and kind of bring our community up to par with the other municipalities in San Mateo County. The other thing, we know that this will be a change for, our food service providers. And I just wanted to highlight that, as is typical in other communities, we can decide on a year plus even to have as a grace period for businesses, both businesses to get up to speed and educated, but also for staff to get up to speed in terms of oversight of the ordinance. And also wanted to highlight that, in the ordinance, there are, what's the word I'm looking for? Options for, if there's a small burden, or if there's a small business and there's a high burden for that small business in the ordinance, there are exceptions for those circumstances. So I'm happy to answer any questions that I'm able to at this point about what's being proposed. None from Jeff?
Oh, just asking it, who would be affected by it in our community?
It's any business that provides food service, so in disposable containers. Grocery store, yeah.
Just-
So like an example right now,
I think that's a couple, we have a. like two
the
or three.
restaurants, Sequoias would be affected, Alpine Hills would be affected, the school district would be
Mm.
affected.
There you go.
Yeah. So right now, for instance, you'll notice, just for the community to see kind of the difference, if you shop in Roberts versus shop in Bianchini's and you look at their takeout food, you'll see the difference in terms of how things are packaged. Bianchini's is in unincorporated Portola Valley unincorporated San Mateo County. And so they are already in compliance as a result, because all the unincorporated parts of San Mateo County have adopted this ordinance.
Just wondering if the other 4 that haven't adopted, if they've just affirmatively decided, do we know not to, or have they
I have no
benign
idea.
neglect? Yeah, okay.
So really the question isn't to adopt or not to adopt.
Right.
Everybody needs to learn more. The question before the council is, would you support bringing this forward? And so if there's
You
no
need to
more-
have 2 people? Was that what we decided? That you needed to have 2 people to bring it forward?
we
Oh.
need to have a majority of the council here tonight. Right, because
Okay.
Craig isn't here.
You don't need to have a co-person.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
This is just to let it come forward on a more fulsome.
So the only decision we would be making tonight is, do we want to put this forward for, to use your words, a more fulsome discussion, and also would require, do you want to chime in? Just because I know Half Moon Bay has adopted this, so you've been through this before, Catherine.
Yes, for those that don't know, I also serve as city attorney for the city of Half Moon Bay. They're of course within San Mateo County, and they adopted this ordinance, the model ordinance in 2020. So they're one of the 16 or so jurisdictions that have adopted it. I will say I was not as personally involved in the drafting. They have a sustainability analyst on staff that took the laboring oar, but I am familiar with its provisions. And basically, who it affects, and that there is, generally speaking, a rollout period to allow for education. The county, as I recall, does provide some of those services in terms of help with education and enforcement. In terms of next steps, if the council were to ask this be moved forward, I would just want to check in with Corey in terms of the timing, because there was a specific request in the staff report for a date for adoption, and I just would want to check in, in terms of how that would work in terms of staffing. If the council would be anticipating that town staff would work on this or town attorney would work on this. If you're comfortable with town attorney working on this, I would be able to assign a more junior attorney with a lower billing rate, but I just want to be on the same page in terms of the cost implications of having me work on it versus a town staff person. For ordinance adoption, there's a two-step process, as you know. The first step is to put it on for a first reading, and that's generally a public hearing. And that would be an opportunity for council to really dig in and ask questions about the provisions. This is I don't want to call it a template, but this is a form ordinance that the county's prepared. My general understanding is that they only allow very limited deviations from their form for the purposes of uniform enforcement. But that would be the first reading. And then if it passes with a majority vote at that first reading, then it would come back for a second reading. And the second reading usually is on the consent calendar or the consent agenda. And if it passes there, then the ordinance itself would take effect within 30 days, but you can specify in the ordinance that there's a 1-year phase-in period, or you can specify a different date in the ordinance itself in terms of when businesses would be expected to comply.
Very helpful background. Any questions before I move it over to? No hands raised in the schoolhouse. We do have one hand raised on Zoom. Rita Comas.
Hi, just a quick comment or question. If this does move forward, will we be able to alert the schools and businesses in the area so that they could possibly phase out these items just on the reasons why it's being phased out? And they can probably save money for the future by working with their vendors so that they don't put in another order that they may have to sell off to another area that is not restricted. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Christy.
Yeah, I just have a comment regarding, isn't this a sustainability committee? I remember going to many meetings discussing this. So are they recommending it? And I know we've lost some employees such as Brooke and Carrie that were working on it. Do we try to get their information in thoroughness prior to going forward? That's my question. Thanks.
Thank you, Christy. I don't see any hands raised, any more hands raised, so I will close oral communications discussion.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Mayor Wernickehoff. I believe, I don't know when it was, but I think this came out of the meeting we had with a couple of students. One at Woodside Priory and one at Woodside High, I believe. Is that right? Yeah. Who kind of initiated this. And I know that the mayor has actually, we've talked to some of the local businesses about this. Have we done that yet? Or so, but nevertheless, thank you for moving it forward. I think this is long overdue. I mean, this isn't even really cutting edge stuff anymore. So most businesses, Bianchini's has been doing this for some time now. And Yes, we should absolutely reach out to the local businesses and make sure they're aware of it. But I don't think the transition is even particularly difficult these days. And we should help where we can. But I would absolutely be happy for this to come back as soon as it's feasibly can come back to us.
Yeah, obviously 100% in support and just didn't realize it didn't have it. Makes perfect sense. And yeah, I totally second the idea of making sure that we work with the businesses because there's so few. Really, it would be quick work to let them know it's about to happen and have them do the research.
Yeah, in terms of the merits of considering this, I agree. It's something we should consider. The only downside is cost to the businesses, and I would want in a next discussion to understand the burdens and make sure that we hear that while we're commenting on the substance of any proposal. The second is the attorney fees. I acknowledge the town attorney's question, and I think it deserves a response. One question for you, Catherine, is would it make sense for a sustainability committee to be involved in looking at what's going on out there? Like, could that be an efficiency, or is this so specialized that really it should be staff or an attorney? I don't have a sense of the legislation. And if the sustainability committee can help sift through some options and make recommendations, I'd be open. But if it's really down to 16 of 20 jurisdictions already have a good format, maybe that's not needed. Do you have any views?
I haven't personally worked with a sustainability committee, so I'm
Okay.
not sure if I have, but I guess I'd go back to say that the county's form doesn't allow for a lot of deviation. So in terms of ordinance drafting, it's really figuring out, okay, where in our code does this fit? Are there any provisions in here that don't make sense, perhaps because we're so small? I don't know that would require a lot of, I guess, community input, or I could see that community input being helpful would be perhaps on the education front.
Yeah.
Like I said, the county does provide those services, but maybe there's some synergies with the sustainability committee and the county and implementation.
Yeah,
piece.
that's a great comment. One question though, I don't get that, like if the unincorporated county has already adopted it for what's in its jurisdiction, how can they constrain what we do? Like legally, how? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, they can't really. It's more that I think most jurisdictions have entered into an MOU with the county for
Oh.
education and enforcement. And one of the conditions of the MOU is that you adopt the county's form.
Okay, so it's practical going forward. Thank you.
And does that share a cost, the MOU? Do we have to pay for that?
I can't recall. I don't think so, actually. I don't know, Corey, if you know anything about that. I don't think there is a cost.
I don't believe so, but we can look into that and get back to you.
And I think, we would get to all this in more detail if we bring this back forward, but as mentioned at the beginning, the concept is that and this is the roadmap from what I can tell has been followed in other jurisdictions is there's a grace period, a year. We could even set it for 18 months if we wanted to, for instance, where that's where the education part would happen. And so there'd be as much time as our community would want
Yeah.
there to be.
Yeah, my reason for asking is just to determine if there's a difference, since she asked about, do we give her direction that this is really a town attorney thing or a staff thing? And that's really my focus, because staff is going to have to spend time on it. It doesn't sound to me like there's many areas of difference from the county that we're practically going to be allowed. So I'm not sure, tell me if I'm wrong, it's a huge difference either way. So I would personally defer to staff and the town attorney to figure out what the most efficient way forward is.
Agreed. And I guess one question I have is, given your sense of what the scope would be, is the proposed timeline a concern?
I don't believe so. looking at the timeline and in terms of it being more of a template, I'm comfortable having staff work with Catherine to move forward, but maybe staff taking the first sort of take and then passing it on to Catherine for the review instead of having the town attorney do the whole form.
Great. And even perhaps your associate that you mentioned, that was, yeah. Great. All right. Any other discussion items before?
I wanted to acknowledge that Rebecca, who was on the sustainability, supported the. Do you want me to repeat that
No, I
There-
heard you.
Recording, but
for recording?
yeah.
Oh,
That
Um,
acknowledging Rebecca Flynn's letter of support and the desire to give the sustainability committee things they want to do and can do, but realizing that this is just something we can move along as an ordinance.
I would agree.
all right. There,
Do you want a motion?
yeah,
Okay, I will move to direct staff to return this to us November 13th if possible. If it gets delayed, I understand.
Second,
roll call.
Councilmember Alves.
Aye.
Councilmember Hefty.
aye.
Councilmember Taylor is absent. Vice Mayor Haskell,
Aye.
Mayor Warnikoff,
Hi,
and motion carried.
thank you, Christine. All right, moving on to liaison reports. There were some in the packet, but are there any that any council member would like to speak to? No, from Jeff. Mary, do you have any that you'd like to speak to?
Let's see. Conservation Committee has has the backyard habitat award they would like to have on the roll forward for December. Is the main thing I can think of right off the bat that happened yesterday. And that should do it for me.
Judith, nothing. All right, mine are in the packet, and so any public comment on liaison reports? I don't see any in the schoolhouse, but we do have a couple on Zoom. The first is phone number 7562.
Good evening, Caroline Vertonghen. Thank you very much, Mayor, for allowing us to comment. I just wanted to make sure that you heard my comments at the Trails Committee. It has not been brought to the Bike, Pedestrian, and Traffic Safety Committee. Over the last 2.5 years, we have heard the complaints from residents and have addressed the concerns even from the members of the committee. So I would like you to urge to bring the Woodside Priory project to the committee. Nothing has been solved, and we have been trying to solve this several issues with traffic, with the safe routes to school, all in that area, and it's very urgent. So I hope you will put that forward. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't have my mic on. Next up is Betsy M. Betsy?
Yes, thanks so much. My question regards the Hawthorne's liaison report, which was not included, but I did have a quick question of calendaring, and that regards the upcoming, as I understand it, the upcoming meeting, a study session, town council study session on the Hawthornes that has been scheduled for October 16th. My question regards the POG presentation last Tuesday. Mid-Penn Hawthorne staff announced that they were actively working with the town of Portola Valley staff to schedule a meeting that included both town council and the planning commission in joint meeting. Does that imply that the October 16th date will be the same and we will incorporate the planning commission, or are we moving the date? And thank you. I ask that as a member of the town manager ad hoc Hawthorne's committee, as well as general interest. Thanks so much.
I'm just going to quickly clarify, there wasn't a report from as a liaison because there wasn't a meeting because I was a liaison to the POG process. And I can report that staff is actively working with the Mid-Penn staff on scheduling literally as of, moments ago. So they're in dialogue and that will be forthcoming. I'm certain it'll come before council within the next month. Still working on scheduling details. Next up is Rita Comas.
Hi, thank you for taking my comment. I didn't hear any type of report from the meeting that was held in the common room last Tuesday. And I know the residents are concerned and, I'm concerned. What's the outcome? What's the follow-up? Is there going to be a report? But I guess all the reports were read or spoken. But if something can be shared about what the process and what exactly happened, to make that meeting not move forward, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Next up is Christy.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted clarification on the Hawthorne. I know that you're no longer liaison for the POG, but it seems to me we need to have a town liaison. So can we appoint a subcommittee or an ad hoc committee to continue to be a liaison? I know Karen Askey is leading a manager's ad hoc committee on Hawthorns. We no longer have a manager. So to me, how does the public listen to the ad hoc Hawthorns meetings with the committees? Otherwise, our voices are muted. And I would like to be a listener in that ad hoc committee, and I would like to request that the process be clarified. So it's my understanding that Hawthorne MROSD will meet with ad hoc committee and ROSD will meet with the planning commission and town council. Is the public invited to both of those meetings, and then what happens after that? Can you please describe the process as it's changed over time? And I would recommend that we still have a liaison. Thank you.
So I'm just, thanks. I'm just going to reply. I normally prefer to follow protocol, but because there seems to be questions, as I just mentioned, staff is actively working on scheduling meetings. Meetings will be happening within the months. All meetings will be public, as they always have been. So that's the best that as soon as, staff and the Mid-Penn staff are able to find the dates that work, it'll be on the roll forward and the, part of the public process. All right, I do not see any other hands raised on Zoom. And so I am going to close liaison reports and motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second. All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.